Way to do it. I'm going to call Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the member and the chair, Honourable David Parker, for that contribution. I wasn't part of the select committee, and I must say, listening to the debate today, I've actually been a little bit confused about some of what the bill says, because I suspect that some of the members on the government benches haven't understood what the bill does either. And I noticed actually as David Parker was speaking that Alistair Scott was nodding along, and I think that probably suggests that David Parker has the right on his side. I do have some questions about the bill, and I want to come to those, but there are some remarks that I want to make arising out of what other speakers have raised in the debate so far of a more general nature. First of all, I think to some extent this bill goes to the relationship between society and the economy, and social arrangements and the economy. And there's a parallel around the environment as well. I think that we have set up an economy that people need to serve. That necessarily, any economic student will tell you that that capital will extract as much value as it can from labour, if it's allowed to do that. And the observations around the changing share of surplus going to capital and to labour, I think illustrates exactly this point, that actually capital, when it can, will extract as much value from labour as possible. Clearly, we don't believe it should be that way. We believe that we should start out with an aim of a fair society, and we should design and engineer our economic arrangements to deliver on that goal. Now, the brake that we have currently on extracting the absolute maximum from labour by capital is the minimum wage and other protections for workers. But very clearly, contracting out work is one of the mechanisms that capital has used to evade that brake. And the result is that we're seeing more and more people, I think David Parker is right, we are seeing more and more people exposed to that maximal exploitation as a result of that. And I think that contracting out work goes hand in hand with the casualisation of the workforce, that these are both mechanisms that are being used by capital to evade the brake of the minimum standards, that floor that governments have set. So, of course, capital will exploit contractors if it can. And so this is a kind of classic case of what do we do now when that situation occurs. So leaving it to the market to resolve, okay, well that's never going to work because it's the market that's the problem. And one of the roles of government is in fact to step in those cases of market failure, where the market won't deliver the social result that we as a society need. I think it's unfortunate that government members are now speaking against taking that role, taking the role of government to step in and fix that market failure, to actually protect those people who are employed through contractual arrangements. So, Mr. Chair, I guess I want to come to the particular question that I have, and this may be as a result of not having sat in on the Select Committee. My question relates to Schedule 2, and I'd like to hear from David Parker about how exactly those particular occupations have been selected. Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. So when I look at Schedule 2, I mean very clearly these are functions that are often associated with the contracting of work, but what I am failing to understand, and I would appreciate to hear from the member, is why these particular ones have been selected, and why there isn't, I guess, a more general specification of the nature of that work, rather than the approach that's been taken here of itemising and listing, because it does seem to me that a problem that's typically associated with this approach is that if we get it wrong, then we end up in an invidious situation where something's been excluded and probably it should be included, and we also have the problem of I guess future-proofing the schedule for types of work that may emerge in the future that we don't currently have to deal with, and I guess relating to the issue that I've raised about the general situation, that capital will always be looking for ways to extract more value from labour, and so what we're likely to see, I think, is that the types of work themselves may actually change to enable that to occur, where we have this sort of tightly defined list. So, Mr. Chair, I won't take all of this second call, but that's the first of the big questions that I have, and perhaps return to some of those other questions in subsequent calls.
I'm going to call Sue